in case you guys didn't know, Republicans are Hitler, and if you care about inflation, you are actually a Hitler enabler, just like people in pre-Nazi era Germany. Take a listen to this clip from MSNBC, where somebody by the name of Matthew Dowd went on a little rant. Take a listen.
Right? I mean, it's not even being hidden. At this point, it's just fascism in the open. And what scares me is that I'm not sure everybody minds. You know, I think there are some people who will just sit back and let it happen, thinking it won't be that bad. And that, to me, is almost more dangerous than the radicals.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, the GOP are Nazis at this point or whatever, but it certainly sounds very familiar to what happened in Germany, which is a bunch of citizens. Adolf Hitler gets a third of the vote. Nobody thought it could happen there. They kind of went along because they said he was going to solve the economy and fix inflation.
Yeah, that's right.
You can hear those sorts of things. And then, lo and behold, a few years later, they lost their democracy, and they're all like, how'd that happen here? That's my worry. That is my worry. If obviously the price of a hamburger, the price of milk, the price of gas is concerning. But that is a short-term problem. The loss of a democracy will decimate everyone's freedom.
So I don't know about you, but I found this absurd for a couple of reasons. One of which being anytime anyone makes a Hitler comparison, like, just don't. Nothing is comparable to Hitler. You just always end up making a fool of yourself. And secondly, he's like, I'm not calling Republicans Hitler, but you know who else cared about inflation? Germans in Nazi Germany. So they're literally saying, suck up and accept 10% inflation and your wages being destroyed. Or if you care about that and vote about that, then you're basically just like Nazi enablers. How do they think that this is remotely connected to reality, or that anyone's going to think that, you know, I really feel convinced by this line of argumentation for the Dems?
Yeah, I don't know. These people are whack jobs, and I'm also convinced that Hitler is the only history they've ever learned in their entire life, because they have literally no other historic examples to go to. Like, anything's bad, it must be Hitler. It's like there's I don't know, probably 1,000 things underneath Hitler that are less hyperbolic you could point to. But the interesting thing to me that I keep hearing them say, and I saw Max Boot say something else online that was similar today, is essentially what they're trying to say here is if Republicans can win, right? Which is essentially saying if there's two parties, if there's an option on the ballot, democracy dies, which is fundamentally the opposite of what the word democracy means.
If people vote for Republicans in a legitimate election, democracy is gonna die.
Democracy dies. Like, what? I don't think you even know what democracy means. And then he says, I want to support the Constitution. No, you don't. No, you don't. The left has not had anything to do with the Constitution for about my entire lifetime, at least. Probably further back than that. Like, that's just, you're not selling anybody. You're not convincing anybody. You are just making yourself look like a Looney Tune. And I'm so tired of people conflating 6 million people being murdered, mass genocide, with people who believe in a different economic theory than they do. Stop. You're disgusting.
It's like anti-Semitic, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think lightly throwing around the Holocaust, it serves to essentially take away the true horror of it, right? And so I think it might not be intentional, but that's anti-Jew, anti-Semitic. It's an insult to Holocaust survivors and their descendants to go around and say, well, if you care about the price of a hamburger and inflation, you're basically a Nazi sympathizer. That's just, it's so absurd. And it also reminds me, what a echo chamber these partisan media networks. This is Joy Reid, one of the most extreme hosts. She has 2 guests who completely agree with her and are in sync with the progressive establishment. I would love, in an actual normal news show, if somebody said something like that, there'd be someone on the panel to point out how absurd that is. But when all you have is an echo chamber, you end up making an ass of yourself on television and just be clowning yourself, and there's no check. There's no force to balance it out. And that's why nobody watches these hyper-partisan networks like this anymore. Their numbers are abysmal, and this kind of content is why.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And The last thing I want to add is this kind of language actually does harm democracy because it convinces everybody that anybody who disagrees with you is a homicidal maniac who must be stopped, right? It prevents people from actually being able to come together and work on things, to understand that there are other people they have to live with in society, have different views than them, and finding cohesive ways to get along. This is actually dangerous and damaging to our culture, to our civil discourse, and ultimately that is the kind of thing that if you keep escalating and then the other side retaliates, then you keep going, you do actually get into wars, you do actually get into conflicts, you do see breakdowns of countries. So I think that this is not only completely unhinged, but it actually is just a very dangerous line of thinking. And I'm so sad that there's anybody in these audiences. I'm glad they're dwindling, but good grief. Get out of your echo chamber, go touch grass. This sounds like, honestly, it should be late night fodder. That's how ridiculous they sound. It should be something where they're just getting lambasted by late night comics. But guess what? Those shows are also dying. They're firing all their hosts. They can't get viewers anymore either because they also become liberal echo chambers.